wanted to talk to you guys today. It's been a really tough week. First, hearing about Ravi probably going to die was very heartrending because he's such a strong holder of the truth. But also, I just find that the battle is getting harder and harder and harder out there, the battle for truth. And there's a lot more casualties. I'm just seeing a lot of people suffering, a lot of my clients are scared, or just friends and people I talk to, really scared and fearful and struggling, confusion, a lot of anger. And so, with that in mind, I was thinking, the Bible says we fight not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers in the high places. And we're definitely seeing a huge spiritual war going on right now. Um, who is the author of confusion? The Bible says Satan is the author of confusion. It says Satan is the father of lies. And there's more confusion and lies than I've ever seen in my life right now, at least on Facebook, which I'm really not enjoying and about ready to not even look at anymore. Um, but what I have spoken to in a few cases, because I'm worried about the people out there that are not like in one of these camps, as they call it, a particular group, and that are really full of fear. And I've talked to some of them. Um, they're just saying, I'm really scared. I don't know what to think. I don't know what to believe. I feel, put off. I feel I don't have a foundation. Now, the COVID in and of itself is scary enough, without all this other stuff that's going on. And so instead of seeing like the Christians of the world joining and really mm, speaking the truth in love and encouraging people, um, of course, I'm not talking about all Christians, but you do see this kind of religious movement on the right that we want our rights. And then, of course, you see, the other side as well. So you've got, Democrats and Republicans ready to kill each other in some cases. And then, the silent majority in there somewhere, terrified, not knowing what to do, something like that. Anyway, so I'm going to go over, I thought, well, what do I want to do? And I thought, well, I've really wanted for a long time to try to help you guys and anybody else who you might share this with to understand and be able to cut through the lies and um, the fear. Satan wants to devour. The Bible says he's lurking like a lion wanting to devour, and in so many ways he wants to devour. And of course, using lies and confusion is a way to devour, and you'll find people using those lies and confusion are trying to devour the other people around them. And the goal of this, of course, is the destruction of people. That's Satan's goal, anyway. Um, and God's goal is to give us peace in the midst of any trial, to give us joy, to give us rest. And so for the most part, I have a great deal of peace, joy, rest. I don't worry. I don't stay up nights. I don't freak out because I have a pretty good handle on the truth right now. But if you don't have a good handle on the truth, um, and certainly you don't have a good handle on who God is, He does claim to be the truth, you're going to flounder. And so I just see a big group of people that are suffering right now. So then I think to myself, well, should I even address it? Why should I address it? I'm just an old grandma. What do I know? And yet, I have some knowledge. So I'm kind of stopping getting on Facebook and trying to address truth because I think there's a lot of people who just don't want to know, and it's sort of turning into pearls before swine type of situation. There's no point in giving truth to people who don't want to hear it sometimes. So, with that in mind, I know that I've talked to you guys and that you sometimes send me these articles to look at. So I'm hoping that if I can teach you some of this, you can start taking these articles apart yourself. So I'm going to try really hard in my old grandma way to help you to see some of this, do my best. And I'm not going to use notes and stuff this time. I just don't know how to work this. Um, I don't know, whatever it is, this video-ish thing. I don't know how all this technology works, so I'm just gonna have to talk and you're gonna have to put up with it. Um, I'll get out what I can. So first of all, bias. Oh my goodness. Bias is so important for you to understand. Okay. So I think I talked to you before about bias is like taking a paintbrush, and if you have a black paintbrush, you just every rock that you get, you just black it and say, look, it's this, it's a black rock, it's a black rock, whether no matter what color it is, you're going to put that black brush on it and say it's a black rock. So bias is taking it's eisegeting, like we learned in the Greek, where you take what you believe and you put it on there. So that's inference. You're inferring something. You're not just looking at the fact, but you're inferring what it means, and you're taking your own bias and putting it on there. So the problem with bias is so people can have a belief. We all have beliefs, right? But our belief should be based on facts, right? So if you don't have a bias, you'll know you don't have a bias because you are willing to and even wanting to look at other people's opinions because you truly want to know the truth about a subject. So therefore, you are willing to and want to see all the other opinions and facts out there so that you can build your foundation. If someone brings to you, oh, let's just use anti-vax right now, sticks in my head. So if someone brings to me a document or a article from someone who's strongly against vaccines, I'm willing to read that and look at it and see if I can find something in there that tells me that vaccines are bad. Another example, um, I think you probably remember when the Jehovah's Witnesses would come to our house and they finally sent their pastor out and he would come out and he gave me that book to read on their take on Revelation. And I said, sure, I'll read it. So I read it, gave it back to him, and then I gave him a book on what I believed about Revelation. And he said, I won't take it. And I said, why not? And he said, because you'll lead me into darkness. Well, that's proof of a bias right there. So when you're not willing to hear another side, and I don't just mean listen, because everybody will say, oh, I'll listen to the other side, but I mean look at their facts, examine them, and see if they're true, then you're operating from a bias. When we're younger, certainly when I was younger as a Christian, I would look at other religions and I didn't even want to engage them because I didn't have a good enough handle on the truth of the Word of God to know how to even contend with the things they were going to tell me. So I had to learn how to listen to say it's. I had to get to the point till I could read the Koran and I could read all these other books and be able to take them for what they say, go through them and find out if there was any truth in them or not. So if you don't have a bias, you're willing to look, you're actually anxious to look because you're actually looking for the truth. If you do have a bias, and I think you can recognize these people, if you do have a bias, they are any information that comes into them, they automatically reject in their own mind before even giving it a hearing. Um, if you have people that have a bias on your Facebook or other, I only have Facebook, so I know there's Reddit and I don't know, Instagram, Twitter, all this stuff. And I can see, because I've looked at some of them, though I don't have the accounts, I can see the misinformation and the craziness that's out there. If you come across someone with a bias, recognize it quickly and move on and don't bother because they're not going to help you finding the truth. So my advice would be get the heck out of there if there's a bias. Sometimes I will engage people with a bias because I think there's other people that are reading or watching on their tube channel or whatever um, that are confused and scared. So I do that now and again, and every so often I'll get someone who will reach out to me and say, can you tell me more? So there are times where you might want to speak um, in those circumstances, just because the Christians are supposed to be ready to give an answer, but to do it with gentleness and patience, the Bible says. So be prepared, but do it gently and lovingly, and pick your times. Generally, if there's a strong bias, you're not going to get anywhere with that person because they're just going to take captive whatever you say and use it to support twist it the way they want. And of course, we all talk about fake news, and that's part of it. So watch for those biases. If you see something in the news, something on Facebook, and you should be able to see right away. Now, let me give you some tips as to how you know that something is biased. Um, I'm going to use my little guy here again that we made in my girls group, Professor fallacy argument, fallacy argument, and we made these little rings in the girls group. So I'm going to talk about some of these fallacies because when there's a bias, you're inevitably going to see fallacious logic. You're going to see fallacies. And one of the first things that I think you'll see is the ad hominem attack. That's kind of a term they give it, but basically it's a personal attack. So when someone does not have a good grasp on truth or doesn't want to learn, doesn't want to look at facts, they're going to use an ad hominem attack. They're always going to attack you. You're going to say, "Well, you think you know everything," or things like that. Other thing. One of the strangest ones I've had is where people will say to me, "Are you biased much?" So they'll use the word biased as if I'm biased to push me away. That's still an ad hominem attack. That's saying you are biased because you won't believe what I believe. That's not arguing the issue. Okay. So it can be subtle and it can be tricky, but anytime you feel like you're being attacked by somebody, you usually are. So you need to pay attention if when you're reading that article or you're looking at that video, you start getting a knot in your stomach, like they're telling you you're stupid, or they're telling you that you don't read enough, or they're telling you that you don't know the right people, or you don't have the secret knowledge, or all that stuff. Pay attention to your gut. You're usually, yes, being attacked. And so then start watching to see if you're getting, if there's shaming going on. If there's shaming going on right off the bat, you know it's an ad hominem attack. And people use shaming when they don't have good facts. It's Ravi Zacharias once said that the truth is surrounded by a bodyguard of lies, meaning, which is really good, meaning that if you want to find the truth in an argument, sometimes you have to kill all the lies around it. You got to dig through all those lies to get to the truth. So let's take vaccine again, because I know it's not because I'm trying to target them per se, but it's a big one, I think, in the community around here. Um, if you look at, let's say you have something that a doctor wrote about why vaccine is bad in a certain circumstance, and he's got facts and he's got statistics, that's great. But oftentimes, what you'll see, or what I've seen, is I'll see someone who says, "I'm this, I'm that, I've got a great published book, I've done this, I've done that, and I think this." And he's biased. And then it'll go on, and because his bias is based on not that my argument is good, but that I am good. And then it'll move into the ad hominem attack. Anybody who doesn't listen to this hasn't done their studies. They don't know what I know. You know, they haven't read enough. Whatever. Um, so automatically that comes out. So whenever you see or you start feeling that you're being shamed or put down, we've gotten off the argument and we've gotten into a personal attack. So right off the bat, uh, if if you get a lot of that in an argument, I just ignore it because I can't get the facts from them. Okay, it's too hard, too much work. I'll go read facts myself on scientific journals or things, or find a better place. So right off the bat, you want to throw out anything that starts with bias and moves to ad hominem attack, starts attacking you or your mindset. The other one that's so prevalent right now is called appeal to consequence or appeal to fear. Um, Either one of those, but that appeal to consequence is a term of one of the fallacies. So you're people are going to come to you in these forums and they're going to be saying, "Oh, this is going to happen. The Illuminati are taking over the world. You need to watch out. And if you don't get on board, then this is what's going to happen." That's going to pay attention. If you start getting a knot in your stomach because someone's telling you something horrific is going to happen, something terrible is going to happen, and but they're not. You're starting to get scared. And for example, let me see. Um, when we first started seeing about the COVID, of course, we were all starting to get scared because we know it's a virus that could be deadly. So everybody was on board at that initial beginning because we didn't know what was going on. It was a legitimate a legitimate fear. It was a legitimate fear. It was a new virus. Nobody knew it was spreading faster than they could contain it. That's a legitimate fear. So that's something you want to go, hey, this is scary. Something has to be done. And of course, our governments did do that. But then comes in the non-legitimate fears. So now you're going to see all these people who are screaming for their rights out there, and some of them punching each other. Well, is it a legitimate fear? Um, is our government in the process of taking us over? No. Let's consider a different one. A different question I got this week. So, why did you close the church? We closed the church. Now, when we first started to close the church, mom and dad and I were having discussions because mom and dad were, they were bringing up this thing that, Christians need to be willing to gather together, um, even in the hardest times, and trust the Lord. And that sounds really good. A lot of the churches were putting that out there. Is it true? Yes, Christians need to be willing to sacrifice. They even need to suffer. They even may need to be martyrs to gather together. However, what we're looking at right now is not a time where the government is telling us, you may not gather together, and you may not worship your Lord, and you may not uh, gather for the purposes of learning what your ministers want to teach you. That's not what we're seeing today. That is what our forefathers ran from in Britain. That is what the martyrs of the past dealt with. If it gets to that place, then all of us have to be willing, as they are in China and Russia and other countries that are cut off, to gather together and perhaps be arrested for doing so. Um, this is not what we're looking at, okay? This is not what we're looking at. What we're looking at right now is a public health emergency, not just in the United States, in the entire world. It's a public health emergency. So the governments of the world are asking for the assistance of not just churches, but everybody, to give them time to sort some of this out. So, um, are we willing as Christians to listen to our government? The Bible says to pray for your governors, and to listen to them. And unless, of course, they're telling you to do something that is, like, say, go out and kill babies, or kill your neighbor, or things like that, or what we saw in Hitler's day, where the churches were silent while the Jews were being killed. Yes, we need to stand up in those times. Do we need to stand up in the midst of a public health emergency and say, we are staying open because we trust the Lord? Well, no, we don't. This is nothing that they've asked us that's out of hand. We are still Christians. We can still touch people's lives. We can still listen to sermons. We can still gather, albeit virtually. These things can continue to happen. Now, let's talk about South Korea for a minute. They had a church there. It was a cultic, weird church, but a big, big one in South Korea. That is where their whole introduction to the virus came from, that church, a super spreader event. That guy, the head of it, I forget his name, refused to close, and it just spread all over South Korea like wildfire, and a lot of people died directly because of his choice. And then he apologized to everybody. That's a whole nother story. But I've seen some people on here that have stayed open. I've read stories, people have stayed open. I'm going to stay open because the Lord wants me to stay open. Again, I'm the guy who knows, nobody else does. I'm the hero of my story. And he died. And then his wife may have died. Last time I read, she was very ill. So, again, watch Satan's lies. They're sneaky, and they're, well, devilish. So, think things through carefully before you make moves, and look for facts, and talk to godly people, and try to uh, gather wisdom before you make decisions. The same thing can be said for all the fighting that's going on, that we need our rights. This is not our government trying to take over. This is a whole worldwide problem right now. Are there bad people in the government? Yes. Are there pedophiles and evil creeps and people who want to make a one world system? Yes. Is this what is happening now? No. Now, God may use this. God may use this. God's done this, put this virus here. But right now, He's brought the world to its knees, and they're grasping. They're grasping for answers. And we don't want to get in the way of whatever God's doing by deciding that we have the answer. So, anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here. So back to bias and then ad hominem. and an appeal to fear. If they're appealing to fear, just knock it off and go try to find some facts so that you can build your foundation again. Okay. Um, not another. I mean, another place you don't want to go. What's the one called? Appeal to an expert is I forget what it's called. Um, well, there's a appeal to popularity, which is one, but that's not the one I'm looking at. Is it equality of belief? No, that's pluralism. Well, I can't find it, but anyway, it has to do with experts. I forget the name of it. Everybody's going to have an expert. There's enough people on this planet right now with enough different opinions that you're going to be able to find an expert. That doesn't mean they're the best expert, they're going to be an expert. This is used everywhere, and it is bad right now. So let's see, a couple examples. Dr. Fauci is certainly a high level virologist. His group of people who've done gain of function research in China and in the United States previously, those particular group of people believe in gain of function research. A lot of scientists do not. There's two different camps there. I think I'd be on the side that I would not want to be doing gain of research. But either or, there's experts on both sides that will take a stand there. Now, which expert is right? Let's look at, for just a short moment, how do you discern? Okay, um, you have you have your facts. Facts are facts are facts. So you've got to get a hold of the facts. Now the facts may change. You may get new facts, and you may have to change your opinion. Okay, but what you don't want to do is entrench into a bias so that you are unwilling to listen to other facts or use those other facts. So let's look at the fact that this virus was very most likely made in the Wuhan lab, because it, in my opinion, it very most likely was. Now, I can't go through all the facts, but I can kind of just trim it down quickly to say that there are things in the virus. There's a whole line of DNA that basically couldn't have come out of nature. And secondarily, this is an absolute fact. There was two grants. I think it was 3,700,000. The first grant and 3,700,000, and the second grant that came out of the infectious disease group that Dr. Fauci runs to do gain of function research in the Wuhan laboratory, because the United States didn't want to hear, because what gain of function means is you go in, you take a virus that we know, like SARS and MERS, were both very deadly. And the virologists in the world don't want what we're seeing today to happen. So in order to try to stop that from happening, they were taking um, viruses that are out there, like SARS and MERS, in the bats and other animals, and they bring them into the laboratory and they give them function till they jump to a human species, till they can transmit to a human, at which time they are then they look at them to think, how can we stop them from transmitting? So they're doing this in like a level 4 biohazard laboratory. Most scientists say don't do that, because you probably shouldn't do that, because it might get out sometime, as one of the flu strains they did got out several years ago. It is very likely, in my opinion, that this virus got out of that Wuhan lab. They were doing gain of function research there on the SARS uh, virus that we're seeing here, the SARS-2. On the original SARS virus, they had the first part of the grant was to gather bats from all over China, get those viruses into the lab. The second part of the grant was to do gain of function research and try to uh, find SARS that could transmit to humans, and then make a vaccine to have that work. Well, the second part of that grant started in 2019. And there's other things, but I guess I think I could firmly state from what I've read that not right now, but probably in 2 or 3 years, it's going to come out that this came out of the lab in Wuhan. Um, And there's facts there that prove that. Now, if you take those facts, and I've seen the guy that I learn a lot of this from, Chris Martenson, he digs into the science. And when he's brought this up to other virologists, what we've watched and what I've seen that he's posted is they're doing ad hominem attacks, which always makes me think that if they don't have facts, that's what they go to. So I'm pretty sure this could come out. So getting back to having the expert, just because you have an expert that says something does not make it true, unfortunately, you have to study deeper and find those facts. Um, one of the other ones I wanted to deal with, oh goodness gracious, false dilemma. Oh, false dilemma is probably the hardest to recognize, but probably the one I most want to talk about if I can get it out of my head. Um, because false dilemma is everywhere, and I don't think people recognize it. I think it's difficult to recognize, and it's being used constantly. Let's see if I can think of some examples. So, what a false dilemma does, it's an either or. It's a dilemma. I either have to believe this or I'm that, or I either have to believe this or I have to believe that. It's false. It's not true. There's all kinds of in between areas, but you're presented to it as if it's a false dilemma. One very clear one. Gosh, this week I was reading Franklin Graham's group was in New York City helping them with their having a hospital there. And then I read that one of the assemblymen or whatever of New York City told them to get out now. They said, we don't need you anymore. And you're a bunch of bigoted, called Franklin Graham bigoted, hate mongering, something, because it's a Christian organization that believes homosexuality is a sin. So, in a false dilemma like that, he's basically saying you either believe that homosexuality is not a sin or you are a wicked, bigoted, hate mongering person. Okay. That's a false dilemma. That's no, I believe homosexuality is sin. I believe a lot of things are sin. That doesn't mean I'm going to hate homosexuals because I'm not going to. So again, a false dilemma. People buy into that, right? So you've really got to watch out for those. They're like everywhere. Another one. Go onto a page of someone who is a strong Democrat. Um, you'll see them say, if you believe in Trump, well, we know Hillary said that if you believe in Trump, you're deplorable. I mean, that's not exactly a false dilemma. That's a ad hominem attack, but those kinds of things. So you're either a Democrat and you stand with us, or you're against women's rights, or you're a hater, or whatever. So they're giving you two options, neither of which is true for you. Um, what's another one? Um, you're either part of the solution or you're part of the problem. No, I might not be part of the solution and I might not be part of the problem. Um, so yeah, you really want to watch out for these. Again, what they're trying to do is to push you to one of two extremes, and this is what's happened in the United States. It hasn't happened as much in Canada. It seems like people are thinking better there. At least that's been my experience. Um, but it would be because of the media, probably. Um, yeah, you don't get to tell somebody it's either this or this. Um, they have a choice. Um, I'm not a woman hater because I don't like abortion. Okay, you can't say to me you either support women or you hate women or you don't care about women or things like that. But I hear those kinds of things all the time. So really sometimes difficult. It's usually not posed to people as a question either or. It's usually accused, so it's in the middle of an ad hominem attack or something, but they're saying you're either this or this. And you need to look at that and back up and say, no, I'm neither of those two. I'm not that. Another one I think of is the wall. You know, I often will tell people I'm very much do want a wall down there. Oh, well, you hate, you know, refugees. You don't care about the people behind bars or children. And then I pull out a litany of the times I've worked with refugees and the things I've done and the children I've helped. And I say, no, no, I'm not. I stand for children and I stand for refugees. I will fight for them in many, many ways, probably more than those people have. but I still want the wall, and there's reasons I want it. So again, you need to get past all of this and you need to talk about the facts. And I think that's about all I'm going to say today. I am really tired of fighting these battles, although I do know that Satan is the one that's behind it. And it just grieves my heart to see people being fooled and tricked and drawn into battles. And what comes out of it is fear and hatred and anger, and there's no learning going on. So that's all Mom has to say for today. I hope it is very helpful to you guys. And you can share it with people if you want, as long as they're not going to sit and make fun of Non and tell me and say how old and stupid I am, because I really don't need that. All right, darlings, I love you. I'll talk to you soon. Whoops. Bye. And